fascinating things that we find in Parshat Korach is the fact that when Korach rebels against Moshe Rabbeinu, and again, according to the Chumash, it's not quite clear what the rebellion is about. Ki kol haida kulam kdoshim ubetocham Hashem umadua tinasua kal Hashem. Why are you raising yourself above the congregation if everyone is holy? But as the rabbis explained, that there was a lot of kinna, a lot of jealousy that Korach exhibited, that his younger cousin Elisaphan became the prince of Kahat, and there was also jealousy why Aaron was chosen, Moshe Rabbeinu's brother, to be the Kohen Gadol. And Korach begins a rebellion against Moshe, claiming that Moshe Rabbeinu is creating things of his own, that these are not directed from above. And he has with him quite a number of people, quite a number of important people. And as well, the other group leaders are Datan and Aviram, who we know have caused trouble throughout, at least we found in the Medrash and the text throughout Chumash. What's fascinating is the punishment that the Adat Korach and Datan and Aviram receive. If we learn together in source number 28, the Chumash tells us, Moshe said, through this shall you know that Hashem sent me to perform all these acts, that it was not from my heart, that everything is not what I've created, but everything is directly divine. If these die like the death of all men, and the destiny of all men is visited upon them, then it's not Hashem who has sent me. But if Hashem will create a phenomena, and the earth opens its mouth, and swallows them and all that is theirs, and they will descend alive to the pit, then you shall know that these men have provoked Hashem. When he finished speaking all these words, the ground that was under them split open. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them and their households and all the people were with it, Korach and their entire wealth. They and all that was theirs descended alive to the pit. The earth covered them over and they were lost from among the congregation. And here, as the Ramban points out, this was not a natural earthquake, a regular phenomena, but something that happens to a specific group of people. And then there was as if no record of it ever happening. There was no, that line that you would say that here was the crack of the earthquake. Nothing. It opened, it's closed, as if nothing occurred. As we know, we find later the Gemara tells us about a certain Arab who showed one of the Amoraim the place where you can hear once every 30 days the Adat Korach screaming, Moshe emes, v'staraso emes, v'anachnu badoim. Moshe is true, and his Torah is true, and we are the ones who are liars. It's as if this voice of Korach is heard throughout all the generations. What I'd like to focus on in Mirza Hashem today, obviously with the question, which is always the question in the back, really the forefront of our minds, what are we meant to learn from this parsha? What are messages for our lives? So that question is always understood in every parsha. I'd like to ask two specific questions. The first question is, why is it specifically that the punishment was that the ground opened up? I mean, after all, we have tremendous amount of choices of punishment. There's no end, right? There could have been fire from heaven. There could have been barad from heaven. There could have been snakes. There could have been, right? We can be creative. There could be a zillion different punishments. Why was it specifically the ground that opened up? And we know the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos in the 5th parak tells us that there were 10 things that are created Ben Hashmashos at twilight, Erev Shabbos, and one of them was the Pia Haaretz, the ground. And as the Baruch Shamar notes, as well as many others in source number 3, that these things that were created were Shinui Ateva, with some type of change in nature. And since God, once He created the world, did not want to have nature break in any way that is Michutz Lateva, so anything that would be against the natural order, that ability for that break to occur, that extraordinary to occur, like the donkey opening its mouth. So it was as if created at the last moment, Ben Hashmashos, that there would be things that would break the natural order, but those unnatural events were created within the natural, or in that twilight period of Friday night and Shabbos, which has the component of, as Maharal speaks about, the Chol as well as the Kodesh, the profane and the holy, that would allow for those things to happen during the historical period that it was necessary. Why is it question number 1, that the ground opened up. What is the significance of this ground? And we'll talk about just at the beginning the significance of it being created Erev Shabbos Ben Hashmashah. That's question 1. Question 2 is, there's an emphasis both in the way Moshe Rabbeinu speaks as well as when it actually happens, that they go down alive. As the verse tells us, and they will descend alive to the pit. They and all that was theirs descended alive to the pit. Why is there an emphasis that they died alive, so to speak? It seems like a very strange concept, that they're lost, but they went down alive. It wasn't like they died and then were swallowed up, but there's an emphasis that they went down alive. What's the reason for this? So obviously with all good Torah, there's a tremendous amount of approaches that we can take. I'd like to present very briefly, just to note, just to get a selection of 2